Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, and welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. A few days before Christmas, and Eva's made us all wear Christmas hats. I want you to know it's not my idea. Eva made us do it. But hey, why not? It's Christmas. It's the only cheer we're going to get because the topics this week, not much to cheer about. But let's get the people in, and let's get in the guilty party first. The lady of the hats, our favourite lawyer. Eva, oh, I like your hat. Very nice. At least you look good. I look like the village idiot. Well, that's probably because I am the village idiot.
Aye, but you're not going to the hairdresser in an hour, Roddy.
No, you would be quite correct in that. My hairdresser's up the stairs. Right. And over there, I think, in the Brig de Cote, is it Monsieur Boswell?
Aye, in the Coat Bridge. Magic, loving it. Great to be back. Staying back at my mum's down in the wee granny flat. It's magic. It's loving it. Love being back in Coat Bridge. I was out in Glasgow last night, getting out in Glasgow tonight. I was in the Park Bar, which was magic, jumping. Out with some mates for dinner at Celtic Park. You wouldn't have liked it, Roddy. Too much shiny silver stuff there for
I would
you.
if I was allowed to bring a can of petrol in a match. I'd have loved it.
And it was just a good bunch of guys, and not all Celtic fans, I don't think, funny enough, but it doesn't matter. It was good crack. And
many
then
people
we
tugging
went
your jersey and tripping you up in the box, no?
Oh, well, there you go.
Anyway.
There you go.
Get away with it.
And it was a brilliant night out, and then off to the bar down at the bar is Cracking Norrie's bar, brilliant.
Oh.
And then on to the Park Bar, so it was a great night out, brilliant. And my sister's house in the West End as well after it.
So his social life. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's show, folks, because Phil took it up with his social life. Happy New Year. Good man. Lovely to have you. And over there in Edinburgh, we've got our Lloyd, I hope. There he goes. Where's your bonnet?
I don't have one. Apologies.
Dear.
I know.
Shocking. Nice to have you back. How's
It's good
things?
to be back. Yeah, improving. Things are improving.
Good. We're delighted. Delighted to have you here, especially for this show. And of course, up there in the City of Discovery, with his bonnet, it's our Alan. How you doing, Alan?
Hi, Roddy. I'm doing well. Just getting ready to take Megan away up to Respite, where tomorrow she'll be seeing the Disney princesses. And before the unionist trolls come onto the chat saying, what is a Republican doing taking his daughter to see princesses? They're not real. They're like your vow.
Well done. By the way, very posh hat indeed. What can I go on them? Police Navidad. Anyway, it's been a heck of a week. It's the last week before the parasites in the parliaments all head for pretending their way to do work in their constituencies. They'll be no worried about heating or anything. But it was a week where I'm beginning to think here, Eva, I'm really beginning to think that Keir Starmer's been planted in there by, I don't know, the Tories or Reform, because he's doing a one-man wrecking job in the Labour Party. I question whether this week, though, Eva, is the Ratner week for Labour. Because I'd like to show you a couple of pictures before we get started, which is, the breaking news, of course, this week, folks, is that the Labour government, after promising throughout the run-up to the election in July that they were going to pay compensation and instate the pensions for the WASPI women, they said they can't do it. It wouldn't be value for taxpayers' money. But, not so long ago, the very same women, I will work with the WASPIs to identify and deliver a fair solution for all the women affected. Vote for me, vote Labour. You can trust us, she cried. Another one doing the same was, and Yvette Cooper. At least she told the truth. We lie about everything. And that's actually the fact, isn't it? All of them, and I've got more to come up as we're talking to the other panelists, Eva, promising. They've broken every single promise, but this is a particularly nasty one.
It's particularly nasty because of the privations visited upon the women who are losing out and who were duped into voting Labour because they were promised that they would be compensated. And I think what some people don't grasp completely is that this arises primarily from a sneaky position adopted some years ago whereby women born in the 1950s were duped in respect of what their date of retirement would be. And ultimately, the Ombudsman ruled a few months ago that these women were for sure entitled to compensation. So this is not simply a political decision taken on a whim. This is going against a decision of the Ombudsman. And as soon as governments, regardless of the size of their majority or their political colour, start disobeying instructions from an independent arbiter, then we're on a particularly rocky road. And it's even more galling when you consider that several of the women who now support this position in the Labour Party would actually be WASPI women themselves. The one that springs immediately to mind is about to become a member of the House of Lords, Margaret Curran. And I'm quite sure she campaigned with the WASPI women for compensation and said she supported them, as did so many other Labour women. And the amount of compensation that was recommended in the main for the women who've had their money stolen from them was between £1,000 and £3,000. By no stretch of the imagination was it going to break the bank, unless, of course, your priority is not to look after the women of the United Kingdom, or the homeless, or the hungry, or the needy, or the pensioners, or those who are losing their winter fuel payment. If your priority is to send billions abroad to fight illegal wars and to bolster wars that are supported by the countries of this world that we ought not to align ourselves with, then of course you're going to tell the rest of the electorate that the WASPI women simply are not worth it. It is dishonourable in the extreme, and I strongly suspect that it's illegal because it goes against the Ombudsman's position. But at heart, it is a betrayal of many millions of women who wrongfully put their trust in a party they believe to be socialist. And if I could just finish, Roddy, there's a tweet this morning from somebody I never thought I'd see the day. Neil Finlay, former Labour MSP, totally disillusioned with the party so far, and he says, he's quoting from another ally of his, Neil Duncan Jordan, a Labour MP, if you were writing a manual about how to lose support from a core section of the voting public, you could do no worse than observe the first 6 months of this Labour government. How true.
Yeah. Of course, Watch My Lips, Sarwar was another one that was involved in we will restore the WASPI's pensions and give them compensation. Little liar. Here's another one for you. Here's a wee video, Phil, of the absolute hypocrisy and lies.
Conservatives with the Liberal Democrats stole this money from those women who were born in the 1950s. It's completely unacceptable, and millions of women have been plunged into poverty and don't just want handouts by Social Security. They want their money back, and quite rightly so. They should be feeling angry about what the government did, and we will right that injustice, because justice is a price worth paying. People should have confidence in their government that they ain't going to steal their pension. It fundamentally undermines the contract between the state and its people.
Backer, Phil, you've got to be able to trust your government, and we will make it right, and then they break their word and break the trust. Hypocrisy on steroids.
Yeah, but we've been seeing this for quite some time from the Labour Party, that once proud party that, funny enough, I was a part of and supported right up to Tony Blair when my eyes were opened. Yeah, but but in fact there are several MPs who have spoke out, as Eva has pointed out, including many not seen necessarily from the left, of what's left of the left of this Labour Party. They were quick to speak out about the decision, and they voiced their alarm to journalists privately and ministers. I mean, somebody, I think it was one, was saying, I'm devastated by the announcement. I stood with the WASPI women all of the way, and the government needs to change course on this fast. And John McDonnell told the Labour list, I'm calling for a vote because the government's decision is a betrayal of these women and cannot be justified on financial grounds. And it's just a complete Conservative move. It's appalling. Starmer's is the party of the Red Tories. There can be no doubt about it. We know this. We know it's true. The evidence is clear. Watch the actions, not the words. Even those that spoke out. The only problem is when you have a majority, most won't bite the hand that feeds them, but you can arrange it with a whip to vote against something, so long as your party knows you're not going to lose the vote, just to keep face if it's important in your constituency. That's a game. But the other thing, just going on to what Eva was talking about, in arbitration, with the ombudsman, if you go through some dispute resolution, when you have the ombudsman investigating something, the parties, well, as Eva knows very well, you would sign up if it was alternative dispute resolutions, conciliation or arbitration, and on to litigation, obviously, if you had to. But if a decision is binding, then they have to comply with it. Clearly, they're either going to break the law or this decision was not binding, the decision of the Ombudsman. That should not be the case. If you've got an independent body such as the Ombudsman, who is the government put these people in place, and the Ombudsman represents an unbiased opinion, it should be held and it should be enforced. And there's something badly wrong here. If a government can ignore the will of a fair decision maker, that's appalling, absolutely appalling.
But we know, for example, Phil, that the British governments ignore whatever suits them to ignore. They're ignoring the international courts. They ignore the United Nations. They ignore whatever doesn't suit them. And we can't do anything about it because, folks, here's something maybe some of you don't realise. We don't live in a democracy. It's a kid on. It's a pretendy. It's like Christmas and Christmas hats. It's all for show. It's not reality. Here's another one for you, Lloyd. The hypocrisy again, the lies.
I'm here with the 5 towns and Yorkshire WASPI women. They've been running a great campaign on behalf of women right across this area but across the country as well. They've been so badly treated by this Tory government. They've had their pension age increase, no proper warning. It's moving the goalposts when people can't plan. It's completely unfair. I've been joining them and fighting to try and get this changed. I think it's completely unfair and I want to keep fighting for a fair deal for the WASPI women. Hey! Let's help us supporting WASPI women. Hey!
Oh, how the establishment and the elite love the gullible that believe them, Phil. Hey, Lloyd.
Yes, indeed. I think, this debate has turned into a discussion about politics, whether what the Labour Party have done is good politics, and everybody knows it's bad politics. The other side of the debate has been about how much the compensation may cost, when in reality this whole thing is about values. And what's exposed here more than anything else is the Labour Party's lack of core values. You, as the party supposedly of the people, and we know, that's a historical term for the Labour Party now, and has been for about 30 odd years. But the party that people put their faith in to not be the Tories, to have that little bit more care, does not take away the winter fuel allowance from pensioners. It does not increase national insurance, leading to the potential closure of GP surgeries and of hospices because of the massive increase in costs landed on these organisations. And they certainly don't refuse to abide by the decision of an ombudsman. These are all things that expose the Labour Party in Britain today as what they are. They are the foreign policy wing of the US government. Everything and anything of import by this Labour Party has been about taking money from this country and applying it in support of American foreign policy. If it's not directly in the Ukraine, then it's indirectly in the slaughter that goes on in Gaza. Now, a Labour Party that believes that their position in the international stage is far more important than maintaining their core vote, and not just the vote, maintaining core values. Surely, if government's about anything, it's about the protection of the weak in society. It's not about creating weakness in society. And the simple, straightforward fact of the removal of both the pension entitlement of the WASPI women, and remember that WASPI women group has grown exponentially since the beginning of its campaign. And in some ways, just slightly off tangent here, but if the campaign had been run on the basis of, no, we refuse, we will have a pension at 60, And women in this country had fought the campaign on that basis rather than seeking compensation and accepting a concept that I find is entirely and completely false. If you are a country who have core values, then it is not an expense you can't afford to give women a pension at 60 and men a pension at 65. It's what you have chosen to spend the money on. The money invested by people, by their contributions in their national insurance and their taxation. If that money has been siphoned off, a bit like what happened at the SNP, if that money has been siphoned off, that proves that you do not have the core value that is children and old people first. These are the values, these are the basis upon which you decide whether or not you live in a civilized society. It is in the opportunity and the provision of support to our youngest and most vulnerable, the children, and at the end of life, absolute support for people who effectively created, built and maintained the country. If you abandon people simply because they have become old, then what you're doing is you're creating a dog-eat-dog society. Maybe that's what the Labour Party actually stand for now. And looking at their cabinet, that would make it about right for me. It's a dog-eat-dog world, the Labour Party.
Yeah, there was some famous right-winger once said there is no such thing as society. She would be delighted. It was her. She'd be 99 today, incidentally, folks, if you'd be interested. She'd be delighted with the Labour Party she helped create because they are Tories. And two other ones that I noticed this week was that Richard Leonard, the man who spent £1 million of Glasgow ratepayers' money to not pay the women of the Glasgow District Council equal pay claims, is out talking about, oh, the WASPI women. Richard, a bit late to try and pretend you care about the women and their payment and equality. And another one who was at Glasgow, or just outside Glasgow, Rutherglen, your man there, Michael Shanks, who turned up for the opening of a letter if there was a camera there. He's another one that was backing the WASPI women and saying, oh, it's got fairness now, let's march. And then as soon as they get in, they quickly forget, Alan. I just want to put this up because just to show that we don't just do this on here, folks, we actually mean what we say. And unlike Starmer, we don't change our opinions because you put out one of the tweets of the week, Alan, and on this topic, and there it is. Don't get embarrassed now. Brilliant. So the Labour government, yes, you heard that right. The Labour government have rejected the report, attacked farmers retaining a 2-child cap, attacked pensioners removing their winter fuel allowance, attacked farmers by including farms and inheritance tax, and now they're attacking the women by stealing the pension they were entitled to. Vote Labour and get worse than the Tories. You put it right, Alan. Do you want to change or add to that?
Well, I mean, I never thought we'd see the day we'd have a Labour government that made the Tories look like the left-wing opposition. I mean, it is bloody ridiculous. Thatcher may have created the new Labour Party, but Starmer is destroying it. They have betrayed more than just the WASPI women. They've betrayed every single section of community that supported the Labour Party. Yeah. And you were right, Roddy. This is not new for Labour because they tried to stop women getting equal pay in Glasgow. They took it all the way to the courts. I mean, who would have thought the Labour Party, who would have thought the Labour Party would be attacking the working people? Never in my life would I have thought that. Even when Blair come up, I thought, okay, but no, it's got worse and worse. I mean, the excuse they used to bring the pension ages together was equalities. Now, if that was the case, why not bring the men's down to 60? That would then release a lot more jobs for the younger people to get on the working ladder and create a bigger tax intake as well. But no, they have declared, the Labour Party have declared war on the working people. So I put this suggestion out to the independence movement. Next year, we declare war on the Westminster system. We start a peaceful revolution to build up as much support as we can. So when we walk into the election on 26, we are a united campaign with one delegate, one candidate on each of the constituencies, backed up by an alliance on the list. And we kick every single unionist out of that parliament and we take back our independence because it's the only way we are going to change anything in this country.
Yeah, independence for independence. And more on the Labour Party later. But on that independence question, Eva, there was a poll come out this week which shows that 59% of people in Scotland back a Scottish independent republic, getting rid of the monarchy. I'm all for that. I'm one of that 59%. But here's the funny thing I find. We're talking about how politicians try and jump the bandwagon. I saw a lot of people. There was a tweet went out from SNP HQ saying, "Oh, this was great news. How this was down to John Swinney." Now, here's the thing, Eva. They are a royalist party. They're all, and we've got pictures of him bowing his head and Sturgeon kissing the hand, and they're all royalist. God bless the monarchy. And now they're trying to claim the credit because the Scottish people are saying you can stick your royalty where the monkey put its nuts.
I think the difficulty for the SNP is that they continue with a revisionist process, and they tried to write Alex Salmond out of their history. They're now trying to rewrite many of their policies. They're even pretending that they've got a policy for independence, although they've not changed that part of their website for more than a year. In terms of the bigger picture, we know that the ISP are a Republican party, as indeed are ALBA. But it's no surprise that 59% of the Scottish people believe in an independent Republic of Scotland. And I know that all of us here are looking forward to seeing that day coming about very soon. But the reason that they're becoming increasingly more scunnered with the royal family, with the House of Lords, with Westminster, with the trappings that we see there, the pomp and the privilege and the circumstance, is that they see the rich get rich and the poor get poorer. We spoke last week about Margaret Hodge and her family's connections to the Panama Papers and the billions sent abroad and the tax avoidance that people like her family and so many others were able to do. We've spoken before about the spectacle of a crown in a throne, of gold thrones, of diamonds and jewels of immense value. And we've spoken about the Lord Mayors and, foreign dignitaries, sheikhs and folk from all around the world coming for grand state occasions, dining, whether it's at Westminster or Buckingham Palace. We've got gold-plated or gold cutlery, gold-plated crockery with all fancy crystal, wine cellars and spirits worth millions. And just a couple of miles up the road, you have the homeless on the streets of London, you have drug addicts, old folk freezing to death elsewhere within the kingdom. And it's no wonder that folk who are worrying about turning on the heating up a degree or two, or turning it on or off at all, wondering if they've got money for Christmas, wondering if they've got money to eat, wondering if they can put anything on the table on Christmas Day, looking round about themselves and wondering, what is the king going to say to us this year at 3 o'clock on Christmas Day? Well, are they hell? Most people that I know would put a foot through the telly rather than watch the king on Christmas Day. They didn't feel quite so bad about the Queen, but it was heading in that direction. But there is no love lost for the king, no love lost for the rest of the monarchy as far as most of the people of Scotland are concerned, principally because, A, he is not King of Scots. He's an English king at best. And B, his family and all the hangers-on are living high on the hog as the people of the United Kingdom continue to suffer unnecessarily, because the United Kingdom is not a democracy, but it is not an egalitarian society either. We've evidenced that from the performance of the Labour Party recently, the Tory Party before that, and the monarchy are simply an extension at the top of those who consider that rank is far more important than what is within a man's heart and soul. So go back to Burns, a man's a man for all that. And that's what we in Scotland need to remember on a daily basis. It's coming yet for all that.
It sure is. 59% in favour of independence for a republic, Phil. Only 54 if we keep Charlie and co. But it's heartening to know, again, another poll, after poll, after poll, after poll, no campaigning, in fact, a party in power that's actually done more to dampen down independence, and yet the Scottish people are still, that's their preferred option.
Yeah, these numbers are staggering, and these are the numbers when undecided voters are excluded. And it was earlier this month, and it was a poll commissioned by the Times following the Scottish budget. And the campaign group Believe in Scotland commissioned pollsters Norstat to ask the same panel if Scotland removing the King as head of state would affect how they would vote. So that's why it went from 54 to 59, which is really encouraging. I mean, the poll shows independence support increased amongst those who voted SNP in the general election by 3 points. Should it mean ditching the economy? So it just shows you there are even more out there who are not SNP voters who are like us, looking to get rid of this monarchy as Republicans. And I think something has got to be due, or some of this has got to be due to the Channel 4 dispatches programme, of the secret millions made by the royals, the parasites that they are, because they are the probe last month into the secret millions the royal families are earning each year. It was the talk of the steamy. And, if this perception, that the realization that these people are parasites, then it would obviously depend. The political leaders have to get behind this, take this serious, because the people are beginning to wake up to it. So Swinney and Starmer should be the ones to influence any transformation, but you'll see nothing from these cap doffers. They're shysters, and they're in it. They're troffers, they're shysters, they're tools of the establishment, and the royal family are very much part of the establishment. So don't expect to see anything from Swinney or Starmer. We have to take our independence, and if that means taking down Swinney and Starmer, so be it.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. The great poll, I'd like you to comment on it, Lloyd. 59%, 54% fine as well. But it's all part of this establishment. The people are beginning to waken up. And one of them is the House of Lords. And again, Starmer lied through his teeth. He was all for getting rid of it, as every Labour man says before an election. It's almost like another party offering carrots for something else. But here, listen to this.
Will you abolish the House of Lords, and will it be in your first term?
Yes, we do want to abolish the House of Lords. I don't think anybody can defend the House of Lords.
Do you hope it's
when
in
I
the
asked for
first
the
term?
report, yes, I do.
Yeah, so and he appoints 30 yesterday, including Margaret Curran, who said, and I quote, "If a bus was to knock down and kill Alex Salmond, I wouldn't even ask the name of the bus driver." That's the type of person you put into the House of Lords. Wendy Alexander, what did she do? But it's all part, Lloyd, of this establishment, and that stems from the royalty, from the king, from the sovereignty of the sovereign, right down. And that's what the people of Scotland are beginning to waken up to.
Yes, indeed. But I have to say, I'm really surprised that everyone's so shocked by this opinion poll, because you didn't really need an opinion poll. You just have to chat to people, particularly after the death of the last Lizzie. Some people had a kind of, a residual sentiment towards her, and that's really what was hanging about in Scotland in real terms. The political class, because they're locked into the honours system, though in all parties, the SNP included, because there's a number of OBEs and CBEs in amongst the SNP elected members, don't forget. Yeah, the whole thing is about the class structure of what is English culture, superimposed to make this pretend British culture. And as I think somebody described during the week, as being British is effectively an admission of a subservient state of mind. And I think being subject to a monarchy proves that. One of the things I got on my high horse about is the private schooling system. The private schooling system is entirely and completely supportive of that ridiculous class-based structure we have in the United Kingdom. But again, getting back to it, the political class will never get rid of the House of Lords because it's part of their structure. They will say it, they'll talk about it, but it's never going to happen. I mean, and we'll be long gone. Scotland will be long gone before there is any serious change or reform of the manner in which politics is done in the rump that is England. Now, in the most important thing out of this, I think, is the following. If it's 59%, then we're only 1% away from Angus Robertson's magic 60% that leads us to independence. And who's just been appointed as the campaign manager for the SNP's campaign in 2026? Angus Robertson. Right, Angus. The campaign's laid out for you. It's right there. We stand on a Republican ticket. We win the seats as a united movement. along the SNP getting off its high horse and talking to real people, a united movement, and we go in, and it will be 60% by 2026, and we'll be independent because Angus said so. If 60% is the magic number, you're only 1% off it, Angus. There can only be one direct way to challenge the British state in the 2026 election, and that is an independence election based on the majority of the seats, the majority of votes. We begin negotiations through appointees from the United Nations.
I go a wee bit further and do a UDI, but that's just my preference. Alan, were you surprised to see that 59% of the people want rid of the monarchy and independence together?
No, the support for monarchy has been going down and down and down every single year. And I think Phil's right, that documentary, which showed that while our NHS and police and other services are cutting frontline services, they're paying millions of pounds to King Charlie because it's on his land that they're using. That's the land that they stole from the people. Any money that's coming into that land should be going back into the people so that we could fund our NHS, not take money away from them. But I'm surprised with two of the main independence parties now claiming that they're Republican and they support Republican views. Well, one of them bows down to every single thing that the royal family asks them, and the other one has 3 members of their NEC who have honours from Her Majesty. Now, I'm sorry, you cannot have both ways. You're either a Republican or you accept honours from the organisation that you say you're opposing. And neither of these parties have supported myself, Eva, and Colette Walker's campaign of removing the oath to get into the Parliament and making it an oath to the people, not an oath to the monarchy. But the other interesting thing in the opinion poll that I've seen was the amount of those who are voting unionist parties who support independence. Now, I believe the Liberal Democrats and Labour were just under half of their supported independence. The Tories, it was about near enough 20% that supported independence. Well, guess what, folks? While you keep voting for unionists, we're not going to get it. Start using your noggin. Vote for what you really believe in. Never mind about any other policies. Independence, nothing less. Put your cross beside the independence candidate.
Correct. A single line manifesto for every independence party. That's what it'll take, and unity. Absolutely 100% exactly what we need. But, you know, while we've been talking all for weeks and weeks now about the WASPI women, about the pensions going to be mean tested, we talked about last week, the week before, they were going to remove the pension from anyone that lived overseas. They got rid of the winter fuel payment, all these things. But while all this is going on and people are attending food banks, suffer and can't put on, what did our MSPs discuss? They put a bill through saying that MPs couldn't become MSPs. Now, they're legislating for themselves, Eva. Instead of getting down to things of tackling poverty, they're playing with the system. Now, while we might agree or disagree with that particular bill, shouldn't they be devoting themselves to things that are helping the people, not what's to do with their internal politics?
This is why it's so frustrating being a political activist and observing what happens or does not happen within our Scottish Parliament and within I suppose the mindsets of those who have been elected to create change, and the change that they create is not the change that we wanted them to create. I mean, the horrible hard fact of the matter is there is no strategy or process at the moment in the minds of the Scottish Government in respect of any independence campaign. There is no independence campaign if you were to believe them, but within the grassroots and within the hearts and the minds of thousands of independence supporters and very many activists, there's a growing spirit of determination to see change and to see it happening soon. It's no secret that we've held our independence meeting with a view to talking in terms about an independence summit. There are other people holding similar meetings and different people looking at different processes and different aspects of a campaign, a concerted campaign, a national campaign, the rebirth and re-energisation, far more than just the resurrection of the old Yes campaign, but something newer and brighter and better managed, better organised. I'm not taking away anything from anybody that campaigned in 2014, but let's consider that to be a dress rehearsal, and let's do for the 26 Holyrood election what we didn't manage to do then, which was to persuade enough people to be on side and to have the parties, the political parties, bending to the will of the people, because the people's choice is independence. We know that from all of these polls over a long period of time. The people are disappointed. Hope will begin to be lost. Voters will drift away if they're not given a date and a campaign and a purpose. None of those are there within the Scottish Government at the moment. And so what we see day in and day out in Holyrood are pre-prepared speeches and pre-prepared questions that all ministers have got ample notice of, with answers that are prepared by special advisors that ministers read out word for word to applause from some and boos from others. And most of the affairs that they're discussing have very little relevance to the day-to-day running of our country, and they don't have any impact on any of the problems that we're currently experiencing. So what needs to happen is an independence campaign that is properly operated, organised and run, and the politicians listen to the people. That would be, as others have said, one candidate in each constituency who supports independence, so that that independence vote is not split. It doesn't need lectures about SNP 1 and 2 or ALBA 1 and 2 or whatever. It needs a concerted, united campaign. But meantime, pending that next election, we need to see competent government again. And what that involves is politicians actually listening to folk that know what they're talking about and properly addressing poverty, not simply talking with sound bites again about child poverty, but looking at poverty across the entire country and considering the poverty of single working people, considering rural poverty, considering homelessness, rural housing need, transport issues, and actually getting the ball in their hands and running with it towards recreating the competent government that we had in the past. In the absence of that, if they continue to debate meaningless provisions like the other day, this MSP and MP carry on, like all the other things, too numerous to mention, that you see them arguing about every week. I mean, again, they were at it this week. How many genders are there? They've already said officially there's only 2, but there's more guidance come out about trans and non-binary answers and processes and equality, where apparently the number of genders has become limitless. There are thousands of pounds being spent on wild goose chases in this country, and that's what John Swinney needs to get a grip of and reappoint somebody whose job is to speak to others within the movement and get an independence campaign up and running nationally without delay.
Hear, hear. It's what we're trying to do, folks. Trust me, we're trying to do it. Phil, I mean, it's a wee bit like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, wasn't it? You know, MPs. And plus, if I don't know if someone's sitting like, say, Russell Finlay, I use as one example, if a Tory decides he wants to go to his mother Parliament in Westminster, can an MSP become an MP? No, I really don't care. I don't give a damn. But I do give a damn about pensioners not being warm and about people not being food on the table. Our politicians have got the wrong priorities.
Our politicians have their own priorities because their priorities for the majority are keeping their noses in the trough, their snouts in the trough. That's the reality. And you notice this bill forbidding MPs becoming MSPs is all well and good, but not before they'd stop Joanna Cherry doing so. And then they get their obedient little gimps in whenever they want them, like Neil Gray. He's allowed to do it. Why? Because he's going to do exactly what he's told. He's not got the fortitude, strength, wisdom, and intellect and influence that someone like Joanna Cherry has. You know, this is just another man in a grey suit pulling the lever, pressing the button, pulling the lever, pressing the button, who will do exactly what they want. And one thing that we got to remember here, there's been, since the creation of the 56 really changed the balance within the power. Power struggles are common in political parties. Everyone is generally jousting for positions, just like when Britain was in the EU, there were three main groups: the German-led group, the French-led group, and the British-led group. It's the same in politics, be that at Westminster or Holyrood, and they all gravitate towards their favourites or their leader, their chosen leader, and they play off against one and each other. And we noted very, very quickly, given the fact that MPs get a higher standing and get more access to the press, media, etc., that the MSPs, and Nicola Sturgeon in particular, was fearful of the power and influence that were wielded by the MPs at Westminster. We found that they very tightly constrained and controlled who was saying what, who was allowed to speak. You know, people who've got experience and expertise in certain areas were not allowed to speak on it. Instead, they get the trusted individuals who'd come from the professional, primarily MSPs, because that's where most of the influence was born out of the party in Scotland. So a lot of the people were ex-councillors or SPADs or had worked within the SNP. They were put forward, and it's the trusted individuals and trusted voices that continue to be heard. And this is another piece of legislation to prevent any MP coming in that they fear and can't control, who's managed to get the influence and can oust one of their own. This is about protecting seats on the gravy train.
Absolutely. I'd like you to cover that for me as well, Alan, but there's something else, because the clock's clicking on already. We're getting closer to Christmas Day every minute. And so I've got a lot of stuff I want to get in. But along with this, as I say, the debating things that really are not helping the people. It's all about themselves. But there was a big hurrah this week when it was announced that our man Humza was standing down. He had now made the decision he wasn't going to re-stand as an MSP in May 26. And I quote, he wanted to stand aside to make way for the younger generation. He's 39, for God's sake, Alan. Have we not had enough trouble with Wayne's getting jobs and getting influence in our parliament?
Yeah, I mean, on the issue about the MPs, I don't care about the dual role, as long as the ones that are in Westminster are withdrawn from Westminster and brought up to Scotland to serve in a parliament in Scotland and totally boycott Westminster altogether. That's the only way we're going to have any power with our MPs, is by just removing themselves from Westminster and sitting with our MSPs in Holyrood. On the issue of Humza, he wants to stand back and allow younger people to come through, but also believe that he's going away to college to try and get another degree to improve his education. Is that not taking a position away from a younger person to get into college and get their chances of furthering their education? Humza's problem is he's realised he's losing his seat and doesn't want to be the losing candidate. And that's how he's withdrawn. Nothing else.
Yeah, it's quite extraordinary, all these things. And not to be outdone, of course, he loves to put a comment in. John, your favourite First Minister of all time, Lloyd, says, he was a pioneer. If you read the article, he called it the pioneer of Scottish politics. A pioneer. I thought he was a pioneer. Wendy Wood, Dr. Robert McIntyre, they were the pioneers. Donald Stewart, dare I say, people of my generation and your generation, Lloyd.
Yep.
That certainly Humza was not.
Humza's not even a footnote. I wish we weren't even talking about him. He's done. He's toast. Get him out. Stick a fork in him, as they say. He contributed nothing other than to give a master class in how to sook, how to connive, how to deviously backstab your best friends and mentors. If that's the kind of thing we want to celebrate, then put him on the top of the tree instead of the angel. The fact of the matter is, Humza gives us the perfect example of who should not be in politics. People who want to be in television, people who want to be famous for nothing other than being famous, people who think they're pretty, people who can't complete a degree, people who have only ever held a job as effectively a file fetcher and a coffee maker should not become the first minister of my country. Think about it. He was the first minister of this country. And he was the first minister of this country because of the inherent corruptive practices within the Scottish National Party at that time. Remember how he became first minister. Have we all forgotten that, you know, out of nowhere, the blessed St. Nicola decided, oh, it's all too tough for me. It wasn't too tough last week, but it's all too tough, so I'm packing it in. Out of nowhere. And then handed over to Humza the Useless. Let that be the last word on Humza. Humza the Useless should never have been the first minister of this country, and it shames us that he was. But the shame, majority of the shame, lies on the shoulders of the Scottish National Party and its internal corrupt practices. And as for the bizarre language of our current First Minister, he has this entirely swinny-eyed version of English that he speaks. He's now suggesting that to Humza and Nadia, let they may have peace together for the future. Who is this guy? Who does he think he is? What is he talking about? Does he not realise that for those of us a more salacious mind, when you suggest to a couple who have had their complications in the past that he looks forward to them having peace in the future, what is he implying?
When it comes to Swinney, I have no idea what he's implying. He's greater men than me have tried. Eva, do you think we need younger generation, younger than 39 years of age, to come in with their vast experience of life to make things better?
You're asking a woman of 61 who'll be 62 next week to comment as to whether folk younger...
It's a kind of rhetorical one, you know what I mean?
In the country. I was a councillor when I was 29. At that time, I think I was already a partner in the law firm where I'd worked for several years. But when I look back, I was green as grass. And yet I would, in those days, have left... And I know this sounds arrogant because it is. I would have left at the age of 29 most of the people that are currently in Holyrood standing a million miles behind me. But that was because I benefited from a comprehensive education in the days when Scottish education really was something to be proud of, and because I had been involved in the real world before I went into politics and was working as a lawyer for a long time before I was in politics. So yes, we need young people in politics, of course we do, but we don't need them in positions of power and influence until they've lived a bit of a real life. It's the fact that we've had so many young folk with strange ideas about things because they haven't lived a life that has contributed to some of the major difficulties in the course of the past few years. They think, if I'm being kind, that it's idealistic to talk in terms of being kind and respecting other people's wishes. And that's all nice and good and decent until you see how it impacts upon other people's wishes and desires. So I'm not disappointed that Humza's leaving the Parliament. I wish that his immediate predecessor was able to say that she's doing the same thing. And there are very many others that I wish had never stood, including some of those who were rocketed like I was to the top of lists as the result of a disability or ethnicity, and that should not have happened either. It's time for a major reset for the Scottish National Party, and I hope that Humza Yousaf's departure from the front of the stage is the beginning of that. Beyond that, Scotland's got a long way to go in terms of political education. I wish that every child in every school and college in Scotland was required to study politics. And that means the politics of Scotland, and it includes the heroes of Scotland beyond William Wallace and Robert the Bruce. It should include John Maclean, the Red Clydesiders, the 1822 martyrs. All of these people, their names should be tattooed on the inside of the foreheads of every Scottish child, just as they leave secondary school before they go out into the wider world, and certainly before they cast their first vote. If we were able to provide that political education to our children, Scotland would be independent the next time we have an election.
Yeah, absolutely. As I say, we've got a few things. It's the last show of the year, and I want to get them in, Phil. But here's another one. Swinney this week, and again, I find the hypocrisy is quite. And you just wonder, does he not realise what he's saying? But he was opining that the chilling behaviour against women has to stop. And I think, why has there been chilling behaviour against women, and which party's been responsible for it, and which policies have been responsible for it? And I come back to it every time, Phil. Am I wrong? It was the GRR, the hate crime bill, the rubbishing of women, the attacking of women, because the SNP wanted to bring in their GRR bill.
Absolutely, and there's also the policy, all these policies that have been brought into place that are all about, they're all about gaining more convictions and feeding off this childish politics and the rise of the children in politics. It's like the children's crusade. It's idiotic. Why we listen? It's like listen to Greta Humbug, whatever her name was. What a clown! And you're actually giving her, you actually listen to what she's saying because everybody's fear to stand up for it. It's the same as this. With Humza standing down at 39 saying he wants the younger generation to take up the cudgels. It's horrific. He's screwed up badly and he's been found out for the half what he is. Lloyd's on the money. Useless as an independentista. The younger generation, the expression elder statesman carries gravitas for a reason. For the same reason, like Eva, with her experience coming into politics, is exactly what you want. Lloyd, Joanna Cherry, Philippa Whitford, people who actually have lived in the real world and achieved, not these bag-carrying sheep, and also this kind of policy that he himself has put in place, this tree-hugging, lentil-munching, sandal-wearing rubbish, utter nonsense. Look, we really need to get our heads straightened and make sure guys like Swinney stop this virtue signaling. We pull them up for it and just do what's right for the people and what the people want you to do. Get independence, nothing less, and stop with the children's politics. Absolutely appalling. And also, leave this to the proper system. Stop dictating how the police investigate and how the legal system processes. The Scottish legal system was a proud and great system. It has been compromised by politicians who don't know what they're talking about, enforcing policies and enforcing legislation that is either impossible to enforce, difficult to enforce, or corrupts due process. They should be held accountable.
Swinney talking about gender violence, Alan. But hypocrisy, is it not?
Hypocrisy is not the word that I would use. I mean, I don't know whether people know about the story in Dundee last week where a young girl in a school bathroom, a unisex school bathroom, found a phone that had pictures taken by a young boy, 15-year-old who's now been arrested, of naked women going in and out the changing rooms and the bathroom. That was a unisex toilet put into that school. Now, I don't think it's far enough just arresting this 15-year-old boy. I believe that the head teacher should also be charged with aiding and abetting that crime. Every single head teacher in Dundee knew that by following the guidance, and the reason it was guidance is because the council would not be legally responsible. If they followed the guidance, they were legally responsible for the actions that they were taking. They ignored that. They thought we didn't have a clue what we were talking about because we knew something like this would happen. They put children, young girls, in danger. And now only a 15-year-old boy is being charged with this. I'm sorry, this should be going further. And maybe once the officials are starting to be charged, then other people will take note and stop this nonsense once and for all. And Swinney, you're responsible for it. You and your cabal in that parliament. Start putting women first. Give them back their dignity and their safety. Scrap the GRR and scrap the hate crime bill now.
It's a wee bit, Lloyd, like an arsonist starting a fire and then starting a campaign to say that, this burning is causing global warming. Because it's the SNP who brought this nonsense into Scotland and who protect it. Would it not be a better way, if he is genuine, if he turned around tomorrow and said, we are rid of it completely, the hate crime bill. We're never going to put the GRR through and we're now going to acknowledge everything in the Equality Act of 2010, and we apologise for anything that's happened to women. That would be the genuine way to do it. This is just lip service.
Yes, it is, but it's classic John Swinney. He will not do what you just outlined, which is the sensible approach, which would break him free from a less than positive past as the SNP leader. It would break him away from the time of Humza Yousaf and the time of Nicola Sturgeon, were he to do that. But John won't do that because he's loyal to the party. And it means he would have to admit publicly that he supported something that he didn't believe in. And he's not going to do that. The bizarre thing about weak people is they make decisions that they convince themselves about that show strength, when in reality all they do is they compound their own weakness. John's counting on a kind of collective amnesia, a bit like St. Nicola. They're counting on a collective amnesia, particularly amongst the media, whereby John can say something like that, but it's never challenged by the question of, well, why in that case, John, did you support the GRR? You know, there's no follow-up question. And that's what they've been getting away with for a long, long time. So John will continue on this way. He will continue to deny what happened yesterday, because what happened yesterday is not what's happening today. It's the worst kind of politics. It's cheap, it's weak, and it does the cause of independence no favours whatsoever. But then again, John Swinney is the embodiment of not doing the independence movement any favours.
Yeah. Eva, I left you on purpose to last on this one because I know how close to your heart it is. I know how you've campaigned. But did you not, I mean, I know you don't get angry like me, but were you not a wee bit, did you not see the irony of him saying that we've got to do, it's chilling what's happening to women, knowing what he's done?
The air was blue. It remains blue. And I have to quote Alan's pal, Shona Robson, there is no evidence that predatory and abusive men have ever had to pretend to be anything else to carry out predatory and abusive behaviour. She had the nerve to say that and to stand by it. And, I echo Lloyd's comments there regarding the terrible lack of proper journalism in this country, because it's high time that John Swinney had the moments that I remember with some joy and a lot of sadness that Nicola Sturgeon and Keith Brown had when they were asked, is Isla Bryson alias Adam Graham a man or a woman? And the repeated answer was, Isla Bryson is a rapist, instead of saying, clearly, he's a man who should never have been anywhere near a women's prison. John Swinney cannot, under any circumstances, recuse himself from any of these decisions because he was at the heart of every damn one of them, and he still is. One of the reasons why there is substantial increases in certain places in respect of violence and offences against women is because it is abundantly clear that many people within the Scottish Parliament who govern our country have no respect for women and have no respect for women's needs, women's dignity, women's safety. Unless, of course, it comes to their own door and it affects somebody that they know or somebody who's able to confront them, which very few of us have been able to do. And never, ever forget that as Alex Cole-Hamilton was applauding and making speeches, shouting about how we did it for you, Beth, the other people who were on their feet in that Scottish Parliament included the massed ranks of the SNP 2 years ago, just now, when that GRR bill was passed. Those same people remain those in the cohorts of the SNP who specifically instructed their council to appear in the Supreme Court a couple of weeks ago and argue that a GRC altered your sex for all purposes. John Swinney's name is written all over that. Every piece of court work relative to that case has his fingerprints on it, and later on may have his black redacting pen on it too. But the fact of the matter is he is immediately and directly responsible with every one of his ministers for what went on in that court, and he should carry the can for the difficulties that so many women face today in Scotland, including the Edinburgh Rape Crisis Centre nonsense, whereby we see that men were allowed access there not simply to be other clients, but also to work in a rape crisis centre. You know, a charity set up to assist women and girls in their greatest hour of need. And women have had to leave there in droves, thankfully able to get assistance elsewhere as the result of efforts of J.K. Rowling, Maggie Mellon, Rona Hotchkiss and others. There is absolutely no forgiveness for John Swinney or Sturgeon or any of the others who were behind all of these campaigns that simply undermined women's safety. And I take my hat off every day to every single woman who was able to join the Women Won't Leash campaign and stick her head above the parapet for the sake of all of those other women and girls that have had to remain silent.
I just thought also, did you hear Nicola Sturgeon this week, Eva, who was asked about this, and she said she was shocked about the toxicity of the debate, which of course she wasn't responsible in any way for, she said, and she was really sorry that it had gone down to such a level. She was the absolute instigator.
She was the instigator. She was the cause. There is no, you know, a wee lassie done it and ran away. Is that what we're going to say?
That's exactly what she said.
That's going to be her political epitaph, or one of them. And one of the most shameful episodes in Scottish political history. You know, a man can become a woman because he says he is, and then gain access to all women's spaces and protections. You know, that again, I'm sorry to go on about this, but we're on the forked tongue approach again. This is exactly the same as the Labour Party and the WASPI women. When the GRR bill was going through the Scottish Parliament, we were all told, we pat in the head, don't know what you're worrying about, it's just a small administrative change, it's not going to really affect anybody, it's a very small percentage of people that this will apply to, nothing to worry about, you know, nothing to see here, move along. The reality, as we've said, is that it's now become apparent that the Scottish Government's position, including the position of Nicola Sturgeon and John Swinney, as we've said, is a GRC changes your sex for all purposes. So that minor administrative change has become an absolutely dramatic, overwhelming alteration to the lives, the protections, the safety, the rights, the dignity of every woman and girl in Scotland, or would if the Scottish Government had its way. So I can only pray the Supreme Court comes down on the side of common sense.
Let's hope so. And again, like WASPI women being prejudiced against, it's always the women that seem to take the worst hits, which is just wrong in our society. We need to right it. Clock moving on. So I want to move on to this new topic, Phil, because we keep saying we need unity, folks. We need to bury differences and we need to fight as one if we want to get to our end goal. And this is where the unionists keep showing us lessons. And they did it again this week in Edinburgh, where they held on to power despite all this scandal, which saw their leader having to resign, and another member who left the next day because, you know, they weren't going to be local. So, but the unionists worked together to retain, and that's something we need to learn. We need to work together.
Absolutely, but the irony is that they learnt from us during the Yes movement. The unification when we pulled all the stops out, and I was working with Michael Fry, who still some of his stuff I agree with. We were getting labour for Indy, we get pensioners for Indy, we get lecturers for Indy, we get the full range, an open. It was the broad kirk of Scottish politics, of the peoples and the beliefs and the ideologies and the principles and the groups, the disparate groups, all came together. They have learned from this. They saw the force that we became, and they also understand how it works by working together to defeat a common enemy. The common enemy of Scotland is this union of unequals and those who would continue to keep us on our knees. And Labour retained the control of the city of Edinburgh Council under a minority administration propped up with the Tories and the Lib Dems. So it took the Conservatives and the Lib Dems, their fellow unionist colleagues, to work together to ensure that Labour retained control, or the unionists, more importantly, retained control. So Jane Meagher has been appointed as the council's new leader, and because it was Cammy Day who resigned over claims that he allegedly sent sexually explicit messages to Ukrainian refugees. Under that kind of cloud, you still managed to retain control, and the SNP and Green councillors that launched an attempt to take over the running of the council were beaten They were voted down 32 to 28, and that's what we need to do. We need the SNP are the guiltiest party. They are the enemy within at the moment. And it's sad, not all the SNP have a lot of good friends there, and a lot of them now are having their eyes open to the fact that we have been betrayed, that Nicola has betrayed us, that John Swinney, Humza Yousaf, and all these clowns that currently stand and continue to deny us our future, control of our country, and instead continue to feed their pathetic wee careers. Oh, they rage against the machine, rage against those who have betrayed us from within, and expose people. You've got to stand up, just like the WASPI women did, just like anybody, like Eva did, and the troops that stood up against some of the nonsense of the GRR. We need to stand up, be counted, and unify.
Yeah, we do. And here's the thing: I've seen a lot of people talking, Alan, that come Holyrood 2026, don't worry, because no way would Labour and his Sarwar do a deal with Russell Finlay for a coalition. I say balderdash. The Unionists would do anything to keep out an independence environment in that parliament. That they don't want to see any kind of. They will join together if they need to.
I remember during the last Scottish Parliament elections, battering my head off a brick wall, speaking to SNP supporters saying, we can't play the system. We've got to play by the rules. Bullshit. The system's there to be played. The rules are there to make sure we never win. That's why we've got to play the system. Because I'll tell you, the Labour Party will jump into bed with anyone to get their power and to stop our movement from getting our goal of independence.
Correct.
We must play the system. We must unite and put away your stupid party politics. This is way above party politics. This is independence and nothing less.
Here. Now, you're from Edinburgh. It's your city, Lloyd. How do you find the machinations going on over there?
Well, I mean, to some degree, yes, it is the Unionists kind of hanging out together, but there are very, very local circumstances. The SNP councillor group in Edinburgh City Council for the past 10 years has been woker than the wokest woke thing you could find in a woke shop. And they're also immensely arrogant. There's not one of them has been a member of the Scottish National Party prior to 2014. There's only 3 of them were actually born and brought up in the city. And they're the ones that are loathed and despised by every other political party apart from the Greens. No matter who this was, no one will work with the SNP Edinburgh Council group. They just won't, because they're appalling human beings. And some of the most vicious of the people who led the attacks on Joanna Cherry and were supporters completely of Murdo Wadwa, the man who used to be in charge of the Edinburgh Rape Crisis Centre. Now, that aside, what's going on in Edinburgh at the moment is absolutely absurd. We've had a council by-election which has had to be rerun because the councillor, the woman who was elected, resigned the following day. We've got Cami Day, who's been sending dodgy texts to young Ukrainian women, but also there's other stuff emerging about a property portfolio, and how, as a full-time councillor, you've got a property portfolio in the second most expensive property, or second most expensive city for property in the whole of the United Kingdom. That might produce some interesting questions. But the farce, the utter and complete farce of a full council meeting to elect a leader, and the leader that gets elected is remotely speaking to you from Tanzania, who didn't have either the self-respect or the respect for the capital city of our country to get on a plane and come back when she accepted the nomination as leader of Edinburgh City Council. It's yet another example of the utter and complete contempt that local politicians in Edinburgh have for the citizens, and also the contempt they have for the nation, because there is a failure in the City of Edinburgh Council to understand the responsibility that comes being a councillor in the capital city of your country. And primarily the reason for that is, as I said earlier, these are incomers. It's not it's not something I like to say, but the fact is the change in Edinburgh in the past 10 to 15 years has been quite extraordinary. The marginalisation of the local people, the closure of our museums, the closure of our libraries, the closure of our community centres, but the benefits of a tram, miles and miles and miles of cycle paths that are only used primarily by the people who've moved to the city for a better quality of life and a much, much cheaper property, who've moved here in the past 5, 10, 15 years. It's extraordinary seeing the manipulation and corruption of a city so quickly, because Edinburgh not being a big, sprawling place, you see the changes, and you see the changes very quickly. And it's tragic that the Scottish National Party hasn't taken their own council group by the scruff of the neck and tell them they're the councillors for the capital city. Get your act together.
Here, here. Now, the clock has beaten us, but there's a few things I want to roll into one question for you all, because I want to be a couple of things at the end. But there's all sorts of reasons we need out of the union, folks, and here's just a few of them. It's happened just in this week. The Royal Mail, instead of nationalising it, the Labour Party, again I stress, the Labour Party sold it to a Czech billionaire. Your Royal Mail, not very royal now. As far as I know, Czechs are a republic. We've got that. We've got no money to give the WASPI women, no money for WFA. But hey, guess what? Lammy, he found another 50 million to give to ISIS, who were 2 weeks ago were bad guys, but they're good guys now. They can get 50 million, but your granny can't get a wee hit. Down in England, be warned, folks. Be warned about what's happening, because the water companies, there you go. There's their bills. They're going up, and it's been approved by, again, the Labour Party by 50, 47, 42, 42, 41. One of the actual officers, the CEO of the Yorkshire Water, gave herself a £370,000 bonus and then stuck up a 41% increase. If you don't want Scottish Water to go the same way, folks, don't put unionists in 26. It's just some of the reasons, Eva, where we need and why we need to have independence.
What I'm asking Santa for, and I ask him for it every year, I would paraphrase John McLean's words. I want a Scotland where every heart can beat free. And I want equality of opportunity for every Scot. I want a decent chance at a reasonable education for every Scot of whatever age. And I want to see an end to the stifling of the potential of the people of this nation. I want to see an end to the theft of the resources of this nation. I want to never again read headlines that say in parts of Scotland life expectancy is falling. I want to see an end to headlines that the war against drugs is being lost and that there are more and more people dying from addiction to drugs and alcohol. I want to never, ever have another friend or relative tell me about a pensioner that needs a care home place and can't get one. I don't want to hear about people waiting days and weeks and months longer than they should for operations or for special equipment, or I don't want to see and hear arguments about whether prescriptions should be free, whether we should bring back tolls on bridges, whether we should be paying to drive on our own roads. And I just want to see Scotland and our people thrive, and that we live and we can look forward to our children and grandchildren growing up in a peaceable, peace-loving, independent country where we talk in terms of realising potential. We are good and kind and respectful to each other. We play our part as equals on a world stage, no better and no worse than anybody else. We can hold our heads up and no longer have a finger pointed at us, have folk laughing at us and shaking their heads and saying, you're too wee, you're too poor and you're too stupid. But we will be too stupid if we don't grasp the opportunity that the Scotland United campaign will bring us in the coming months and the coming year. We need to see unity within our movement so that we can, as a country, not just stand tall in the world, but break free from the chains that tie us to this union because it's outdated. England is a poor country pretending to be rich. Let them stand on their own 2 feet and they can have their independence too, and we'll enjoy ours. They can make their decisions, we'll make ours. We'll be good neighbours, but will not be controlled from Westminster any longer. That's my wish.
Here. Because the other thing, the reasons to get out, Phil, here was another thing that happened this week. This guy, just to go back to the House of Lords, some of the people that get put into the House of Lords are ones that helped get rid of Corbyn and who are all staunch Zionists like Berger and Margaret Hodge and Manderson here as well, who our incoming POTUS thinks is a moron, incidentally. But Manderson is the US, the British ambassador to the US, is just another. This guy's representing you folks. Do you really want that? There's so many reasons to get out the union, Phil.
There is, and it's just they continue to look after each other, cover up and rape and pillage. They continue to asset strip the United Kingdom, the richest part of which is Scotland. The Royal Mail sold to a Czech billionaire is no surprise. It's already been privatised. We need to renationalise it. Same we do with British Rail. Get rid of that. Let's get an independent Scotland. We privatise ScotRail. We become like, I mean, it's no accident that the best run and most profitable railway systems and cheapest and most efficient are all of those that are run by the national government in Spain, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in France. But yet these are the companies that come in and invest in Britain to make money so they can subsidise their own. Look after your own people, not these shysters, not these parasites, not these royalists. None of these people give a damn about you. And no money for the WASPI women, and yet 50 million more to ISIS. The head, well, Al-Sham is the latest. Yeah, they're head choppers. That's what the guy is. I can't remember his name now. He was a serious leader. He's chopped heads himself. He's executed many. And analysts are talking now, as I mentioned last week, at least 100,000 people. It's happening right now. Will be executed. Are being slaughtered right now at the hands of this scum.
But these are the good guys, Phil.
No, they were put in place by us, funded by us, trained by us, equipped by NATO. British soldiers, British officers trained them. Americans, the Israelis, the Ukrainians. They're getting backed up by us to try to create a second front for the Russians, and they didn't buy into it. They just let it go. 200 schools at least are being burned, destroyed, all girls' schools, because we discussed last week. They don't think women deserve to be educated. That's the kind of people we're backing. Now Israel, the best, and the West will turn on these attack dogs. And then the privatisation of water, they're coming for everything we've got. Everything you've got. There's a reason why your pension's the worst in real terms in Europe and was ousted recently. Even the Mexicans get a better pension in real terms. It's appalling. The pain will continue. It's the same as at the end of 2014. We said it at the time. I remember the wee guy in George Square. Bring it on. Bring the pain on. Because the theft of our resources, the persecution of our people, the poverty, their greed will be their downfall, as far as I'm concerned, as more and more Scots start to see what they are doing to us and ours. Up the revolution, that's what I say. Long live the Republic in Scotland. Independence, nothing less.
Absolutely. Alan, it's just quite your wishes for the year is that we draw close to it. You owe me a quid, by the way, Alan.
Sorry about that. A very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Let's hope it's a good one, without any fear. That was a song that was brought out in 1971. I was 1 year old. I'm now 54 years old. And I have never lived 1 year without a war going on somewhere in the world. Wars make money. We have world leaders now who are running the world as if they are in a Game of Thrones. They are throwing their citizens under the bus, making them cannon fodder, while they are sitting there enjoying as much of life as they possibly can, just to gain the power. We've got to see through this. Yes. The people have got to unite and stop allowing them to run our lives for us. They are in power because we give them that power. And what can be given can be removed. And we must unite this movement next year to build a proper movement with the information we need to go into 2026 to free our land, so as our people can elect the people who will stop the wars. They will stop funding the wars, and they will start using our money to benefit the lives of our people, to take them out of poverty, to make sure they don't freeze to death, to make sure they don't starve to death. That's what we need for next year. So your New Year's resolution is to get off your backside, get onto the streets, and get the independence message out to every single doorstep.
Hear, hear. But wars doesn't only make money, it makes widows and it makes orphans. And that's why we've got to stop it. But here's something that really pleased my heart. I want independence for all sorts of reasons, Lloyd. But the one I envy and I love, my favourite nation apart from the Scots, is the Irish. And I envy them because they were able to make this happen this week. And I would love to see in Scotland that we could close down the embassy of a genocidal nation, of a nation that is killing babies and civilians just with no question in 5 different countries and still be a victim. I would love to close their embassy. Did this give you the same buzz?
Yeah, it does. It also reminds me that the Israelis got away lightly. The last time somebody vacated an embassy in Dublin, it was the British after the Irish had burned it down in 1971. So the Israelis got to leave without their bums burning, so that's good. But, you know, I thought the insult that was used by one of those foul spokesmen of the Israeli government, where they described the Irish as the Palestinians, and that was immediately used by President Higgins. The Irish are great. They've been smashing on this. And in some ways, it's the understanding of their own history and their own oppression has led the people of Ireland onto the streets and created a campaign that was effectively unstoppable. I look forward to the day when the people of our country are equally as aware of their past and their history and will have the same form of reaction, which they will have when they understand their own history. But as for my desires for the coming year, an end to the slaughter of Palestinian people by evil Europeans who've stolen their country.
Here, here. And people in Lebanon and in Syria and Iraq and everywhere else, I oppose them all. And for the people of Ukraine, let's hope peace comes there soon too, because there's so many Ukrainians dying unnecessarily, all because the American military-industrial complex and American foreign policy. Well, folks, it's the end of the show. It's Christmas time. I hope you and your family have a great time, a great Christmas, New Year. We're going to take a wee break. In fact, later today, I will be jetting on a plane and going to see my babies and grandbabies in Dubai. And I'm going to have a good Christmas, but off a couple of weeks. Now, I'm making a couple of specials, which I'll play over the holiday period, but we're going to wait at least till the Parliament's reopen, unless, of course, these idiotic politicians give us something to come together again. But until we see you, may you and yours have a great Christmas, a happy New Year, and see you in that New Year. Take care now.
Merry Christmas.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.